Hello, hello team. Don't know if anybody's out there. As usual, is it just me or is it others as well? Can't tell. Two. It looks like there are two people. Hello, two people. Say hi in the chat. It'd be good to see how you're doing. Before I get too far on into anything, I want to set a little bit of expectations around timing. I've got a bit more time than usual today, so we might go on. There's quite a lot that I actually want to cover. Hey Dan, nice to have you. So don't feel like you've got to stick around for the whole thing. Obviously, as always, it's you come and join for the bit that you want to join and leave for the bit that you get bored of and sick of my voice, that kind of thing. I know you don't really. I know you love it. So what are we going to do? There's a lot of things that I want to get through. There's some exciting things, some interesting things. There's a lot of stuff's been happening, which is worth getting into, I think. It's been a bit of a quiet, obviously it's quiet, it's Christmas and holidays and everything. Everybody's been off and enjoying themselves, and that's been great. Hopefully it's been great. Hopefully you've had it great. Welcome to 2024, etc., etc. I found that quite challenging, honestly, this year, because one, I was ill over the holiday period, so didn't really enjoy the time off as much as I would have liked. I did have time off. That was a good thing. I definitely, I had a week where I basically didn't touch the computer. And I say basically, I literally didn't. So that was good. But I was ill, so I didn't really do anything else. Anyway, and because it's that quiet time of year, there's not a lot of stuff going on. People are perhaps less engaging with the things that you're putting out there, if you're putting anything out there. Me being, trying to do lots of different things all the time and trying to get the word out and being excited when I've got ideas and all of that. It's kind of hard. I think psychologically it plays with you a little bit. I found, why aren't people responding? Why aren't people reacting? Blah, blah, blah. And I'm just have to keep reminding myself, they're probably still just chilling out. And when you're raring to go and let's go, and then they're not there and not ready, it's a bit tough. So I've been sort of wrestling with that a little bit over the last few days. But it's okay. I am okay with it. I know that things will pick up as we get into the new month, new year, new outlook. Hopefully it's going to be a good year for everybody. I hope that you're excited about the things that are coming up. I would love to hear about some of them. If anybody wants to talk about that, feel free. Tell us what you're doing, what you've got planned. It could be personal things, it could be work things, it could be, I don't know, it could be anything. Let's chat about what you've got planned. I've got a lot planned for this year. I'm going to Japan in 8 weeks from now, something like that. So that's going to be exciting. I've never been to Asia at all, so this is first, and I'm really looking forward to it. I love Asian food. I love Japanese food especially, and it's just going to be such a different culture and everything. So I'm really excited to find out what it's going to be like. So yeah, there's that, which means for those couple of weeks, it's going to be a couple of weeks, I'm probably not going to be streaming, which makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. And what else? Yeah, native PHP, we're going to talk about that today. I really want to make a big go of that this year. I wasn't able to as much as I wanted to last year in the end, and that's meant that it's really dragged, and things that could have made progress or that should make progress haven't been able to make as much progress as I would have liked, and you know, that's disappointing for me as much as anybody else. And yeah, there you go. Hopefully we'll make a little bit of progress on it today. And then the other things, I mean, I've got like freelancing work that I want to do, you know, I'm still going to keep doing that. I don't, you know, foresee a need at the moment to sort of go and get a job. And that's good. I think that's good. Gives me a lot of freedom and flexibility, which I'm happy about. And the other projects that I'm kind of working on, I'm excited for different ones of those. We'll talk about some of those in a bit more detail. But basically, yeah, I mean, like make a good go of it this year, kick the year off well, and try and get loads of people engaging. I say loads, I mean, I don't know what that means, but get more people engaging with the stuff that I'm doing, and you know, hopefully spending money on the things that I'm building, and get them sort of self-sustaining, which would be really good. So talking about those, there's a few, maybe too many, but you know, small bets, like a few small bets, not large eggs in one big basket, but smaller eggs in many baskets. So let's talk about Laradir first, I think, just really quickly. That hit a really nice milestone this week. I wrote a post about it, which I might link to in the notes afterwards. But basically, we got 2,000 registered users, which is amazing. I should have bought a party popper or a hat or a little whistle or something, but I didn't. Confetti, yay. 2,000. I mean, it's not huge numbers, honestly, but it's still cool, right? It's like a good milestone to reach. It's a bit of a random one. 2,000. You know, maybe 2,500 or 5,000 or something. I don't know. 2,000 seems like a nice number to me. I like it. So yeah, wanted to share that. Not least of all because it represents a more than double increase in the number of users that were signed up to the platform when I acquired the site. So there was just under 800, which had taken just over 12 months, I think it was, for the team that were running it to get to that point, and they weren't necessarily putting loads of effort into it, getting it out there as much as I've done in the last few weeks. But yeah, it took them 12 months to get 800, and it's taken me less than 2 months to get another 1,200. So that, yeah, it's good. I think part of that was down to doing some activities like the Laracast competition that I did, which there was a winner and they've got their prize. And I'm not really going to name names unless they want to come out and say it was me. Let them do that. But yeah, they're hopefully enjoying that and happy with it, which is really nice. I want to be able to do more of that, honestly. I think there's a lot of opportunity for people to get things out of this process. So good things that are going to be beneficial to them and their careers or their businesses, whatever it is. So yeah, that. And then as part of that, which you might have seen, I wanted to do something that I have been thinking about for a really long time, like for years, which is to, if I'm running an app, why not just completely open source it? And then obviously the prevailing wisdom is don't do that, because lots of reasons that aren't always easy to elucidate. But the the main thing for me was like bucking the trend, bucking the norms of this is what you should or shouldn't do when you're running a SaaS product. Granted, I do believe that it's easier in some cases and harder in others to do something like this. You know, I love the idea of open source. I love working on open source. I love what open source has enabled for everybody. And I think being open and sharing more is a really good thing in general, always. But there are some times when that doesn't really make sense from a, let's say, a business perspective, right? I think the problem that you've got is if you're running a SaaS and the product itself, the technology, the solution that you've built is the product, then just simply going and saying open sourcing that is probably not going to do you any favors. You're opening yourself up to all sorts of problems there. Like, you just have no defensibility as a business anymore. Obviously, if you're of a certain scale, you know, you've got certain market penetration, you know, it's been doing it for years and years and years and whatever, then maybe that will be easier to do. But I still think there's a high amount of risk in that, which is why most people don't do it. That's fair enough. And then there are businesses where the product is not really the technology. I mean, the two sort of do go hand in hand in a lot of cases, but I've been thinking more and more specifically about Laradir and like how really what I want it to be and where I am hoping it will get to is not it's not even this place where developer profiles are hidden and sort of behind a paywall where businesses have to pay to get access to them. I think there's some other nugget that I haven't found yet in there that's going to unlock that in some other way, which means that actually, you know, just enabling a platform of open profiles will be the thing that happens. And the data there at the moment, it has a certain amount of value, and you know, open sourcing the technology doesn't give anyone access to that directly. So I kind of see that as an ideal product to try this on, and I am trying it. I'm just going to see what happens. You know, there might come a point where I actually do build something into the product itself that I want to keep private, and I can still do that. Honestly, I can still build another service, another code base somewhere else. Right now, what's there, I kind of feel like this is an interesting code base for people to explore, and I'm happy with where it's going, and I'm happy with what's in there enough to say this can basically be source accessible, and maybe people can learn from it. Maybe people will want to PR some changes to it. That would be really cool. And, you know, obviously you have to figure out some way of compensating people for doing that, which is also an interesting problem and a nice one, I think. So basically what that is, I've made it so that you can basically gain access to all of the source code, like it's just a single repository for all of the Laradir application, so website and everything, by signing up for GitHub, like sponsoring via GitHub sponsors. So for $20, you could just do it once, and you could get access to the repo for a month, and you'd get any updates that I make during that month, and you'd be able to see the code and kind of see how things are working and make some changes, propose some changes or something like that, if that's what you're into, which would be kind of cool. Then you can obviously carry that on month to month, and you'll get access to all of the updates and things that I do, and direct access to me, you know, about that project through GitHub and that kind of thing, which I think is kind of an interesting proposition. Personally, I'm excited to see where it goes. I've already got one person who's signed up to it. if you want to sign up to it, you can go to github.com/sponsors/Laradir. And you can go to laradir.com/sponsors, will take you to the same sort of place. Yeah, it would be cool to have a few more people on there. And the other thing is that I have set it's pretty high target. I think it will take, at the current level, it would take 200 and something users, 200 and something people to sign up for it. But basically, if they did, and I was getting, a sort of reasonable amount through the sponsors that way, I'll completely open source the app, and then it'd be not just source accessible, but licensed in a way that people could use it and do some other things with it, which I think also has some interesting possibilities. So that would be quite cool to explore. I'm just seeing the chat. Hey, Aza and Austin, I remember you. Good. It is afternoon actually now, so yeah. Morning for you, I guess. Hope it's not too early. What else is going on? Right, so that's Laradir. Right, then quick. I've got more updates to come and various things I'm doing. The main one is job notifications. So I've been collecting job ads from across the interwebs, and I'm putting them into the database, and I'm using the data that I get from those job ads to match up with users' profiles. And it's kind of a beta, which is opt-in by messaging me. At the moment, I think I need to make that a little bit easier for people to opt into. But basically then, if your profile matches up with a job ad that I've got in the system, it will send you an email saying that you're a match, and then you kind of go through and apply if that's what you want to do, which I think is kind of a good, for people who are looking for a role actively, and they don't want to keep scouring all the different websites. That could be a good way of doing it. Also you're not just getting random notifications of jobs that sort of match. It's going to be tighter based on, a bunch of factors that I'm still working on improving, but bit by bit it'll get better. So if you know anybody who's up for that, let them know, and I'll sort them out. They can get access to the beta. Hey Essa, good to have you. Hope you're well. What else? So other projects really quickly. I haven't been doing anything on Spread since the last time I did stuff on Spread on stream, which is probably nearly 3 or 4 weeks ago. But we'll be picking that up again on future streams, just because it's one of the main project that I wanted to focus on streaming. But we'll see. It depends what people want really, but I'm happy to go with the crowd partly. But I'm going to be continuing with the project anyway. So yeah, UK-based people who want payments without card fees, come hit me up. That would be good. What else? So the other thing is, one of the things that I've bumped into recently, particularly with Laradir, but also like my personal site, is wanting to be able to create open graph images. So that there's dynamic, like they have maybe the title of a blog post and some other bits and pieces. But I'm not a good designer. I don't want to manually go into editing tools to create one each time. I also don't like when they're exactly the same for every page and every post. And, I want them to be somewhat custom, so that there's some flair and variety in my social media posts when I'm linking back to my own properties and things. Because, when you just got all like a ream of tweets that are all very samey visually, like the images are all identical, it just looks really but I don't want to go down the route of having to craft individual images for each and every single post. I know some will use like the hero image from the article or whatever as like the backdrop, and yeah, it can get really complicated and really messy. And I know that there are services that do this, and there are open source solutions that do this. You know, I've spent quite a bit of time over the last week investigating those. When I streamed before the break about this, and we kind of had a crack at doing it, there were a few services that I'd found and a few solutions which we looked at. I'm not happy with any of them. I think the paid for solutions are okay, but I'm not super comfortable with some of those. Like, I just want to own this process. It feels straightforward enough that I should just have that as part of my app. So I kind of tackled how do we go about building this? And I actually didn't really build a lot on the last stream. We managed to get through about, I don't know, probably the first bit of thinking about what the API might look like for it. So, and by API I just mean the function methods that, you know, function names, sorry, that you'll call, and what the thing should look like. And it was a start, but I tell you now, it was nowhere near as like what it's ended up, and it's still, you know, it's still not great by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm super proud of where it's at right now. I tagged v 0.2.1 earlier, which fixed a little issue, but 0.2 was like huge. It's kind of almost fully refactored this thing, and you know, it's only just started. I don't think you can call it a refactor when it's right at the beginning. But anyway, it's there, it's working, and it feels really nice. And I wanted to share a little bit about that before I get into anything else. So, do you want to join me as we look at some of this together? I'm going to do it anyway, regardless of what you say, because it's my show and blah, blah, blah. But, yeah, let me know if there's anything particularly you want to look at right now, and we'll get into some other interesting stuff in a bit. I'm actually in the middle of crafting a tweet kind of about this, and so I'm kind of fighting with Figma, funnily enough. How odd. But I'm trying to express something quite, I would say, complex. I want to do it in a more visual way. Let's see, what can I do? I'm going to share my screen with everybody. Let's go. OBS, where are you? And do this. Let's get to this. This might work. Cool. I've got so many windows. Oh, wait. Hello. I don't even know. I haven't been able to clean things up in advance, but it's all right. I know there's nothing important going on here. Look, how many windows? Way too many. Quit some things whilst I actually can. I don't need. Definitely not going to need this. Definitely don't need that. Or that. Or that. Okay, that's better. Figma, I know, man. Figma. I don't know if I love it. Do you know, one of the stupidest things that I've tried to do today that I just can't figure out how to do is cut a portion of an image that you've pasted in here. Why is that so difficult? Why can't it just go, I want this piece and I want to move it No. Never mind. Anyway, so what am I doing here? What's going on? Well, basically, I want to describe a problem. This is the problem, and this is the solution. And I've basically done the image, like this is for a tweet. This is really boring, but this is the stuff that I do. This is the stuff that I get on with. I just want this, I want this frame, I want it to be smaller so that this doesn't get squashed. Oh no, that's disgusting. Everything's relative to the frame. Whoa. How do I... Okay. Masking. Oh, I knew somebody was going to say masking. Okay. No, I don't want to scale. I just want to change the size. Oh, the anchor thing is... What does that mean? Why is it... Whoa. Oh, I dislike this a lot already. I don't want to scale. No, I don't think this is what I want. I just want the frame to change size without moving everything down. So I'm gonna... I can't select across multiple things. So I have to do it the slow way. And then move. See, well, there, that's... Oh, just been caught with my trousers down. That is exactly... Maybe I can just select all of these, right? This is the... I'm selecting all of those. Right, that makes sense. Slightly better. And then I can't select the frame unless I click the name. Oh man, this is like a usability nightmare. I don't know how people cope with this. Fine. Well, that's simple enough. Like, it does the job, sort of. And then I'm going to download both of these frames, right? Because I want the image. Now I can't align between frames. I don't know. What size did I set this to? 20? Let's make them the same. And this could be... They're about the same. They're not exactly, but it's okay. And then PNG. Let's go for it. Austin's got all of the keyboard shortcuts. Man, you know a lot more about this than I do. I shouldn't be doing this. This is really, yeah. This is not my job. It's not my job. Right, well, let's get rid of that because I don't really care about that. Oh, that was the wrong window. Thanks, Chrome. Where is that now? Let's get this back. Now it's reset. It's all going wrong, isn't it? Yeah, smashing your head into the Figma wall. I love that. There's the idea of a Figma wall somewhere, and you're just going poof, poof. Anyway. All of that was for this tweet. So the point is to make this tweet work more clearly. And maybe that does. And that's it. Let's just do that. That's fine. Let's see. I don't really care about any of that stuff. In fact, we can get rid of that altogether. And that is this. I kind of wanted to go and spend some time here looking at this together, because I think this is a fun little repo package. But I'm not going to do that because of time, and I don't want to just keep wasting time on other stuff because we're here for a different reason. But please check this out. It's the OG. I'll link to this later as well. It should work okay right now. There's a lot that I want to do to it, make it better, but basically it works and it's quite expressive, I think. I feel like it is, where you can just new up an instance of a class and modify some stuff and then save it to a file. Yeah, I'm happy with it. So it's a bit limited, I will say. Maybe it should be intentionally limited for a while, but I think it's quite good. The tweet that I've just done, the image, that Figma nonsense I was working with, was just to express one of the things that I'm really proud of, and you'll see the tweet if you follow me on Twitter. But it's how this stuff, the gap between these blocks of text, which are related to each other, right? This is description text to this title, and I want them to be together no matter how big the title gets. And I don't want to give it like a big wide berth box that it can just fill, and then if you've got a short title, it ends up leaving this massive gap between the two. I want them to be located together by a specific margin that I can set in what I call a layout. So what creates this image is a layout, and the layout defines the spacing and sizing of these elements, right? And it basically says I want a gap of X between these two blocks. And the bit that I'm trying to express is, it's all well and good if I set the height of this to Y and the gap to X, but when the text is really short, or when it's really long, if this block doesn't respect the actual size of the final rendered box of the text, then you end up with more or less space, and it doesn't respect the margin that you've set. I was just kind of proud of that. So that's there. It works. You can see it working here. You can see some other demonstrations of it. Let's have a look at in here. Actually, maybe these don't demonstrate what I'm talking about very well, because I think these are all the same. Yeah, okay. The length of the titles are the same. Maybe I can do a quick demo of it though. Let's see. Let's do a short blog post title. That's the dark one. The dark one. That's not going to be there. It's going to be in my Finder. Okay, this is demonstrating it quite well. So although it's maybe the colors of this theme are actually not good. But you can see the paragraph of description text has shifted up for the shorter title, and that's exactly what I want to happen. So the margin, the offset between this title, the shorter title, is the same as the one between the longer title and the description text. But yeah, because the text is shorter, the description text is kind of aligned with that to maintain the layout, which, yeah, in some cases is the right thing to do. I think it's the right thing to do here. The other thing that I've been able to show you, I haven't really talked about, is that when the text gets too long, it gets clipped. So there's a couple of things happening here. One is width-wise, when the text is actually just really long and there's no line breaks in it or anything, we have to introduce line breaks, right? So there's a really cool function for that called wordwrap in PHP, which is really simple. It just says, after a set number of characters, create a line break. And that's what happens. But it respects word boundaries. So it doesn't just go like in the middle of the word longer or in the middle of the word subtext and cut it at that number of characters. It keeps the word together and introduces the line break before, at kind of the earlier point, before the length gets exceeded. So that introduces the breaks, which is really nice. And that needed a little bit of math to work out, well, like when the text is this size, how many characters can I fit into the width that I've defined for the box? And then the other one is the sort of vertical way, when the text gets too long and it's going to run down, which obviously adjusting the width is going to also cause. Then when it hits the maximum height that I've set for the box, which might be something like this in this design, then basically I want anything that comes after that to get clipped. And that's what this one demonstrates. So that test was the final one where it's got, they're identical paragraphs, right? And I have split them with line breaks so that I've created this gap, this natural gap for those two paragraphs. But you can see what happens when it gets too high. So it's saying this is now too tall for the box that we've given it if we add another line of this text at this size. And it gets clipped. So some slightly smaller but potentially much longer, it's clipped there. And then we add an ellipsis and trim the rest. So you don't get weird like text spilling out over the edges and down out of sight or whatever, you know. Cool. That was a bit too much time spent on that. Sorry, that might not have been that interesting for anybody, but I'm quite pleased with the outcome because it's now going to be super easy for me to create these layouts. So if there's a layout that you really want to see, let me know and I'll give it a bash at creating it. And yeah, there's things like I want to introduce watermarks and pictures and calls to action and who knows what else. So this could get quite cool quite quickly now because I think I've got all of the main pieces in place to make this super flexible. That's that. Okay, we can stop faffing with that. Right, what are we here to do? We are here to talk about native PHP. This is where it gets, hopefully, onto something that matters. No, all of the things I've talked about matter today. Like, they matter to me. But native PHP is the one that I think seems to matter to everybody else. So, if you're into that, stick around. I'm just going to switch back to camera for a second because I need to clean up my desktop a little bit more before we go into this next section. And I'm going to stall by talking about native PHP whilst I do that. So what's been going on, first of all, in native PHP? Well, for me personally, I haven't been able to spend anywhere near as much time as I would have liked on it. Just going to have a quick sip of this. It's all stalling. It's all stalling tactics. Yeah, I know last year I said, I think publicly, I was going to spend a bit of time on this in the summer and try and smash things out. I did spend time on it, made a lot of progress, felt that it was making good progress and kind of getting ready to launch the Tauri driver, which I, sort of keen for, because I like Tauri. I like it a little bit better than Electron. I hear from others that, they're sort of enjoying Tauri as well, and I wanted to get into something that used Rust and lots of, things there. High tone, and yeah, what can I say? This is what I'm going to explore today. Actually, this is the thing that we're going to look at a little bit more, if I can get up to speed with it and see how it's all going. Basically, I want to challenge the project a little bit. I want to do something that feels like it. I don't know if this is going to work, honestly, but it feels like potentially is going to be taking it to another level. And there are lots of things that we could do to do that, honestly. There's still so many things that need to be worked on to take it to that next level, but this one in particular feels really kind of top of the list for me, and this is why I wanted to explore it, and I've already started, and we're going to do it a bit further today, and that is, what if we could get PHP, your PHP application, which is a web application, running without a web server? Sounds kind of crazy, but the principle of it goes like, what does the web server actually do in the scenario that we're talking about? Well, in any scenario, what does the web server do? It acts as a mediator between the outside world and the inside world of the server that it's running on, and it enables a certain type of request to be made to the application, or to the server, and for it to be handled in a certain way. And the type of request we're talking about, the type of action that's happening, is a HTTP request, right? So we know that a browser makes that kind of request, and it responds with whatever the client has. The server responds with whatever the client's asked for. So the client has asked for, I want HTML. The server will try and respond with HTML. If it's been set up to respond in that way. So that's like our standard interface and boundaries of how we think about building a web application. So we just, it sits behind some kind of web server that serves up this thing. When we're in a desktop world, there's arguably no need for a web server, and it only introduces some complexity and potential risk. So, yeah, even Adrian with PHP minus S, which is kind of exactly what native PHP is doing right now. We're just using the built-in PHP web server. And that's kind of okay because it's bundled in and it does enough of what we need it to do to work sort of well enough. But yeah, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, they do say don't use it in production for a reason, and it's not production ready. But yeah, it's fine, kind of fine as a proof concept, I would say. in this context of native PHP. But I think we can do better. And this is, I don't know, this is a bit of a stretch. But what I'm proposing is sort of, if you swap out the interfaces and the approach that we typically take, can we still get the same result? Remember that the web server is the mediator between the outside world and your application. There is no such thing in a desktop environment where both sides, the client and the server, are on the same machine. You know, it makes sense when we're developing locally to have it work the same. You know, like I've got Nginx, or you know, I'm using Herd, so it's Nginx and whatever else, the PHP, FPM, the layers in between, to like make it look and work like it's going to work in production. Because in production, that is how it's going to be accessed as a web application. But as a desktop application, all housed in the same shell, the same binary, it doesn't need to work that way. We don't need to have it communicate across like a HTTP service and be mediated by some web server, even if it is just a basic PHP -s web server. All we need to do is have a request of some kind made to our application, and for our application to respond in the same way that it would do as if it was coming through a web server, basically with HTML and CSS and JavaScript, which is what every web application is, like with brass tacks. Obviously, fundamentally, we're talking. But what if we could get to a place where your PHP application was able to be served by nothing more than like calling a command, you know, a command line with arguments and whatever, you know, or send a kind of request through some other medium, and still have the application return the expected result. Sounds like RIP Livewire desktop apps. Well, this is the thing that we need to like tackle. I think this is what I want to get into. So now I've been like talking expressively about that, but I haven't cleaned up enough of my desktop to actually dive into this. So I'm going to do that bit. Do I have that anywhere? No. What else? I'm going to close all of that. I'm going to... quick one for you all, whilst I'm still fiddling with this. Is anyone using Sublime? And if you are you experiencing issues with it not updating the file list in the UI? Because I have bumped into that recently and it's been really annoying. I have to keep going and clicking refresh folders. Oh, hi Faisal, thanks for coming and joining. It's nice to have you with us. Don't be afraid to chat, folks. You know, I like a bit of feedback, be good. Feel free to, you know, chat amongst yourselves as well. Yeah, so Sublime, have you experienced that in Sublime? It's ruddy annoying. Well, yeah, so I don't know, updating Sublime. Just to be clear, I mean about like updating the files. Like if you add a new folder or you rename a file or you delete a file. We'll see this in a minute, because I'm going to get to a place where we can actually do this together. So where are we? Yes, okay, that's the one. That's the one. And then this can go, this can go. Keep this open for a bit. I think I might have closed everything now. Fine. So we can go back to this. Yeah, okay. Let's see if this has the same problem. If I just do, just going to create a new folder. No, that's appeared straight away. That's really annoying. Maybe there's something wrong with the project I was working on. Oh, I can just do this, save, test, yes. It's appeared. That's so annoying. Now everybody's watching and it's disappeared. That hasn't been working for me for the last week or so. I'd do that and the thing would stay there. What? And then I'd have to go project, refresh folders so that it would update the view. It's crazy. Okay, I don't know where I'm at with this now because it's been a while since I started this idea. Let's go. It's got to be Tauri project. Maybe it's not. This doesn't feel right. That's not the right thing. No. Tauri plugin. This might be the one. Serverless. Here we go. Okay. Oh, the other thing is I haven't been able to update my Rust setup because I installed it via Homebrew. Rust C. Wait, has it updated? What's everyone saying? Sorry. Can we use any other database instead of SQLite? Let's talk about that in a moment. You'd have to bundle the other database. Yes, Austin's right, but we'll go into a little bit more detail. Not feasible. Time for PHP Storm. Well, yes. Do they have one for Rust? I don't know. I think they were working on one, weren't they? I do use PHP Storm. I love PHP Storm. I love Sublime as well, because it's really fast, but it's just been wonky and it actually seems fine now, so I don't really know what's going on there. Anyway, quick one about the databases stuff. You do not want another database in native PHP world. Honestly, trust me. You just want SQLite. If there's something not working the way that you would like in SQLite, you need to figure out how to get a way of working with that, because there really isn't a better bundleable database solution. It's so good. Yeah, just don't reach for something like the only context I can see wanting and legitimately needing another database driver in the static PHP world that native PHP uses is if you know exactly where the application that you're building is going to be installed, and you're in that much control of the environment that you can say beyond a shadow of a doubt that a certain version of MySQL is going to be on there. And if you've got that level of control, you don't need it to be a native PHP application. Like, you can probably just install a web server and run your PHP code there and not worry about it. Like, there's no scenario where you're going to be bundling MySQL with your application. It's certainly not one where it's going to work. So just use SQLite, it's going to be fine. If you've got specific issues with SQLite not working with what you're trying to do, we can talk about those. I'm happy to try and help figure it out. That's not a problem for SQLite. A point of sale that's storing hundreds of orders in a day. SQLite can handle millions and billions of records, like, happily. There's no issue there. I think your issues are going to be other issues entirely. Like, it sounds like what you probably want to do is connect to a remote database, and to be frank, you shouldn't do that directly from your application. Certainly not when it's installed on some client machine, or even if it is a point of sale unit that you control and own and got admin rights to, whatever. Just because you're going to have passwords and keys and things stored on it that are going to expose too much access to the wrong person if they try really hard. Basically, if you're going to try and do any kind of, I want to send data from this device to that device, that's when you're back into the world of HTTP. You should be using an API for that. You need an API on the server, and your client applications needs to know how to speak to it securely. And then, like, if it's in a native PHP app, you're not talking about what database drivers has the PHP got installed. You're talking about, can it make a HTTP request? And the answer to that is always yes. So even a very thin API for the requests that you need to make will do. Yeah, ESSA, exactly. Bundled database, SQLite, that's the way to go if you want to store things locally with any kind of performance. And I would say if you're doing hundreds of records per day, then you want some of the assurances that SQLite is going to give you. Yeah, SQLite with PDO is great, and that's why we use that in native PHP. Yeah, if you have got any issues about missing certain behaviors that you're used to with MySQL, there's loads of help online about how to get around those things. You'll be fine, Faisal, basically. Just try and think about it as a distributed system. You've got your data is being stored locally, and you're going to sync it to some external service, or you're communicating to the external service to store the data. Obviously, you've got to think about what happens if it goes offline, and how do you handle situations where there's a delay and whatever else. Like, those are the problems in your domain that you've got to solve. But try not to reach for, I need MySQL in native PHP. That's not really going to work. Okay, so right, let's get back onto this serverless nonsense. What are we doing? So I've got a version of this that I think was kind of working. In my memory, it was working to a point. And now I just need to, we need to discover what some of the problems are, what are going to be some of these challenges, and then figure out how to get past them. So you can see here, I've cut out a bunch of things. I was starting a Rocket server on the Rust side, which we would need to talk about. What else? And spinning up the PHP process here and kind of the management of that. I don't need to do that anymore because we're not having the web server just sitting there waiting for requests. I'll go into a little bit more detail of exactly how this is working. Yeah, we don't need things like port numbers, and like I spent quite a bit of time figuring all of this out, like how do I randomize the port, because I don't want my web server to be sat on a fixed port. If everybody knows what that is, then people's native PHP applications can start being hacked and abused and, you know, whatever. So I would spend a lot of time trying to figure this stuff out, and then I've ripped it all out because we don't need it, because we're not starting web server. So there's just all these things that just make it so much easier when you get rid of web servers, honestly. Anyway, it makes it so much easier from one angle. Like, there's obviously stuff that's going to make harder as well, frankly. But let's see where we get to. What have we got here? Okay. Right. I think the thing to do is to try and build this thing. Let's go. I think it's Tauri demo. I think I've got it set up in Tauri demo. Oh. PHP Tauri demo. And then, do you know, I can't even remember. Like, is it npm run? Gosh, can't remember. There's something that I can run from the base. Oh no, so I have to run the artisan build native. Gosh, I can't even remember. And that actually, because of the way this is set up at the moment, because it's, well, not just at the moment, but this is the way that it's going to be, actually kind of makes this a little bit challenging. But what am I? Where am I? I lost. What's happened with? Isn't there a command somewhere that I can run? This one. Maybe. But I've got a feeling that in the context of the root of my app, it doesn't have that. Yeah. So I have to go. Well, there's either native serve, is it? Don't judge me on my Rust. So this is V. That's got nothing to do with the stuff that we're dealing with. Right, okay, it worked. It does work. I knew I remembered something. What have we got? What's happening here? We're going to break this down and we're going to work out what's actually going on. So in fact, let's just go do the code, right? It's all happening in lib.rs. Hopefully this is kind of big enough for everybody to read. Where does it start? There's a lot of stuff still here that I don't need as well, like this gunk. I need the functions, but I don't need this is rocket stuff, which I'm not using anymore. But it's principally stuff that I need later. So what is librs? Librs is a Tauri plugin It's the main application file for the Tauri plugin for native PHP, right? So this is what gets executed when oh, I don't need to look at it through this way because I think it's all piped up dynamically here. Let's have a look at the native PHP Tauri driver is what installs native PHP for Laravel, and it includes the necessary stuff to do the building of the Tauri application, right? So it's a little bit of an upside down, topsy-turvy installation of Tauri because we need to keep the Laravel application available. And we want to think from the Laravel developer's perspective more than like a Tauri developer's perspective. So we focus on the Laravel application. This is where the developer works most of the time in their Laravel application. They install native PHP Tauri, and then we do the work to package all of that together and make it work, which is what I'm in the middle of doing. And the way that works is through this main RS file. This is standard Tauri setup. The only thing that's different here is we've added the native PHP plugin, which is what I'm building, right? So far, this is basically vanilla Tauri with a few modifications, right? The plugin, where is it? Is this librs file that I was looking at, okay? So when this loads, when main RS gets executed and the main function gets run, the main loop of the application, the Rust application starts, Tauri is run, which is what starts the browser environment and the, what do you call it? Web view. That's the main thing, the web view. And as part of that process, we're injecting, like Tauri allows us to establish a plugin, and native PHP is the plugin, right? So native PHP plugin is this impl. This implementation is the plugin, so it's a plugin type. And I still don't understand enough of Rust to really read half of the things that I've written. That's okay. I'll figure it out at some point. Basically, this is where we then say, like, set up what we're trying to do with the application. So there's a bunch of things that we could do, like at the boot up, you know, here we prepare the database, for example. We make sure that it's there and that it's been migrated to the latest version. Every time you boot the application, make sure everything's working as you expect. Those kinds of things. There's going to be a bunch of other stuff. But first principle is I actually wanted to make it look like a web request because that's what people are familiar with and what I'm familiar with. So this looks like it's making a HTTP request. And that is what Laravel kind of expects as well, remember. So even though we're not using a web server, Laravel is still going to expect something that looks like a web request to come through. So that's what we're trying to imitate without a web server. And then the bits that come after this are like, how do we get the response into the browser view? And this is where it gets really crazy because there's stuff that we will want to do or want to try and do, which this approach is not good enough for. And I haven't had time to think it through further. So this is what I kind of need everybody's input on. But we'll come to that. So what's happening in this request method? Well, originally this was the one that started PHP. We can look at the diff somewhere. I've changed it from yeah, it's all a mess. So it was called start PHP and it's now called request. We're not starting a server, so we don't need a port. I'm just going to cull all of this stuff because we're not actually, well, the port related things. This might be useful at some point, I don't know. And path relative to the build route, I can't remember what that's about. There's this whole thing of like, where does it put the files? How does it have access to the thing that we're building to know what to do? And Tauri, as far as I can tell for now, wants, maybe I've shifted this around already. Like, we were copying files into here somewhere, but I don't seem to be doing that anymore because I can't see them. So maybe it's actually using the source files from source, which will be good. So they're here. But maybe it's not. Maybe something skew-if is going on. Ah, no, that's right. It's not in, that's definitely the same folder. It's fine. I'm just being silly. It's not source Tauri, it's in source. So we do copy the files. So basically what we have to do, and this is crazy, we have to copy the entire application, the Laravel application. It's not quite the entire application, but it is most of it, including the vendor folder, into the Tauri plugin area, the Tauri driver, so that it's kind of closely accessible to this stuff. We can probably work out a way around that at some point, but for now I just haven't. So this is the application. Every time you run the thing, it moves all of the files here, which means making changes that can't get reflected straight away, like making PHP file changes, is not going to make the Vite server react and stuff. So yeah, that gets a little bit, yeah, Symlink. I tried that at some point and it wasn't really effective. Like, it caused all sorts of problems so the other thing is, it's doing stuff to these files in the process of the boot up, right? And I ended up at one point doing something and it messed with all of the files in the core of my application. So yeah, and bundling is harder and all of this. Yeah, it just creates lots of problems with Symlink. So I just try and avoid that. It's actually, in some ways, it's kind of better if, when you're doing the production build, if you just take a copy of all of the files and then build that, cool, we're done. We don't need to worry about, has it impacted the original core files? It just makes it slightly harder when you're developing because you want to see changes reflected quickly, but we'll get to that later. That's not even a problem that we can tackle right now, because when you see what's happening, you'll realise that there's nowhere even near that anymore. But basically, this request just runs a command, okay? So the PHP sidecar, which is the PHP binary for the given platform that we're currently on. So in this case, it's going to use the one for Mac, an ARM Mac, because that's what I'm using. So we've got those binaries are available. They're copied into this location when the build starts. So it's going to be using this one for me when I say new PHP sidecar. And I'm saying, like, with this sidecar, I want these environment variables to be set, and then I want to run this command. And that's what's occurred here. And the response from this command, the output, is returned from this. This Rust doesn't have an explicit return. I'm there looking, where's the return? Because this line doesn't end with a colon and it's the last one in the method, it's a return. This is a return. So it's a string of the whole output from this command. So let's have a look at the command raw, like without it being run through Rust. So if I'm in my native PHP Tauri demo app, is that the right place to be? I can't even remember. I think I can do it from here. PHP artisan native. Is it request? Yeah. And the method, well, those are the method and the URL are what we passed into this function, right? Thanks, Austin. I'll speak to you later, hopefully. Have a good call. Where is it? Where did I make the call? Well, here, request, get slash. So I can just do get slash. And it outputs all of the HTML that Laravel's generated. Well, it's more than that. It's got the headers as well, right? So how is it doing that? Let's have a look at that, because I think this is useful context for everybody. Hopefully it's useful context for everybody. That's in the Laravel package somewhere. No? No, I haven't moved it into the Laravel package yet. I've kept it in somewhere else. Where have I put that? Ah, no, it must be in. I don't know where it is. Native PHP, Tauri. It's there. But this request command. So all this is doing is building a request object which we then send to the app kernel. So this is exactly what Laravel does with a web request that comes from a web server. It packages it up as a request and passes it into the kernel. So there's nothing, I'm going to say plainly, there's nothing different about this and that. There obviously are differences. First of all, the web server will create a whole load of environment variables, and it does, that get passed into, like, implicitly. You don't think about them, but they're there. And they make a difference to the way that Laravel operates. Like, there's obviously a bunch of context that Laravel gets from the server that in this context, we aren't passing that. And some of those things are going to come up as gotchas, and we're going to have to figure out how to make that work. But mostly that should be quite easy, hopefully. But this isn't even the main problem. I actually think this part was super straightforward. So there's some stuff that we could do to make this better. It's a bit imperative at the moment. Like, I have to say on the command line, because I've said that this is the way that I want it to be, and just like, I can change all of this obviously, but method, URL, and then data, maybe, and that interface gets translated into the request object format. We could do something better than that later, but this is fine for what, kind of starting. And it just, like, this just echoes out the response object as text, which thankfully the response thing, I don't even know what type that is. I should type in that here somewhere, I guess. we could even just do see what it is. I don't know if it's worth type hinting it, honestly. In this case, it is just a response though. So, do I already have that in here? No. It might be that there's some interface or super class that we could tie that to, which will handle different cases better. This one should be void at the moment. Anyway, the point was, it's a response class, and the response class is stringable. And when you string it, what happens? It outputs all of the headers as well as the HTML. And that's kind of okay. Like, maybe we'll want to do that a little bit better. Maybe we want some kind of our own response class here that will do this differently. But I don't know how easy that's going to be to pull out of the kernel, you know, like to tell Laravel, use this response class. Maybe somebody's already done that and we can borrow that. But principally, let's just stay with the response class that comes out of the box for now. We won't introduce any new sort of complexity there. And we'll just text output to the standard output of the command. And we know that Rust can pick that up, right? So we do. It gets the output, passes it back from this function. What else do we do? Actually, leave the next bit until somewhere later in that function call. Yeah, okay. So that just does the request and gets the response. And then here I strip the headers, right? So we want the headers, but the thing that I care about the most for now is the content. So I just want the HTML that's been rendered. And then I want to render that into the web view. The problem is, when it gets into here, if it's HTML and it's not gone through the sort of usual channels, like it's happening after the fact, like we've loaded. Let's think about what's happening in the context of Tauri, right? We load the web view. In fact, I'm not even sure of the timing of that here. I think it's kind of prepped at this point. So it's loaded, but there's nothing, like if I remove the bit where we inject the content here, and we reboot this thing. So we have to do this manually because it doesn't pick up when you do packages. Tauri packages don't trigger its own built-in restart process. So that's kind of frustrating. For those that don't know, what that means is Tauri has its own file watcher going on, and when you change files like Rust files, and when you save them, it will restart the compilation, not just reload the page in the browser, but actually restart the compilation. So you can just leave the compiler, the debug compiler running, and it will just keep rotating when you update files. But when you're working on a plugin, it can't do that because something. because it doesn't watch files across plugins, which probably makes sense, like it can't. That's kind of annoying when you're developing plugins, because then you have to remember to keep going in and restarting. Maybe I'm missing something though. You know, I haven't been doing this a really long time. So if anyone knows any better, please tell me. But now that I've removed what's happening here, putting the HTML that we get from our response into the page, let's see what's here when we've got nothing. What's really annoying is there's something. It's not an empty web view that's just waiting for a full like HTTP response. It's kind of a basic page, like it's empty. And there's all sorts of problems with that in a way. It means that what's happening? It's not doing that thing that the browser does at the start of the request. It's not making the request and waiting for the response, right? The Rust has already said, like, create the window, create the web view. I haven't got anything for you to put in there yet, so just like make a blank one. And then because it's not going through all that like initial stuff at the same time as waiting for a response, when the response actually does come in, like we have to inject it. Or in fact, it's not coming into the browser, it's coming into Rust, and then we've got to do something with it. So it's not going through the typical process of like parse this HTML, parse the JavaScript tags, parse the CSS tags, parse the whatever, and do the things that you normally do as a browser. No. And so that's a little bit problematic right now. That's kind of the first most important problem. The way that I've kind of got around that as a proof of concept again is to do this main eval, which is, I think it's the right thing, but that's basically injecting some JavaScript into the page, which then loads the HTML, and I don't want to do that. I'm doing that just for demonstration so that I can prove that I can get the response into the browser, but this isn't the right way of doing it. This is in fact completely wrong. I want it to be something else, right? It needs to be the thing that triggers the browser to effectively load all of not the browser, the web view, you know what I mean, but trigger it to load everything properly. And this just ain't it. So this is where we have to go on a bit of an investigation. We have to go on a hunt. What do we do? So Tauri, let's start with eval because that's where I got to. Why is there no documentation? Rust. I really dislike the Rust docs. Eval. This one. So yeah, this just evaluates JavaScript on this window, and that's not what I want to do. I want to update the content of the window. And so this window thing is probably the thing that this window struct is the place where I feel like it should be. This is the place where I can do this sort of thing, it feels like. Okay, and so this is the kind of the problem, is that it is still thinking in terms of it is a web client that's making a HTTP request to a web server to a certain extent. So when the request goes in, the default request, whatever that is in this world, I don't think it's even going to show us. I don't think it's that really. Maybe it is. By default, Rust is responding to that with, like, without a web server. It's just saying, I know what you're trying to do. Here's the file. Here's the HTML that I want you to have. And that might be this actually. So and I've cut out the default window setup here. So it's kind of like I need something in Rust that's going to accept that initial request and then go and get like I kind of need to hook into when the browser makes a request, I want you to go and do this. When the web view makes a request, go and do this. I don't know if there's any such hook. I'm just scanning through these. Level. Right, okay, that's like platform specific behavior. That doesn't let us set it, that gets the URL. I can't set the URL. Listen. Component loaded. Events that are triggered using trigger, emit and trigger. Or the app window emit function. Wait. This might be the right thing to be doing. Depends what those events are. What are these things? How do I find those? I don't know. Does that mean that it's related to these emits, or is that a different thing? Yeah, it looks like it. So that I can listen to, I don't know what's triggered. Oh, okay. Triggers an event to the Rust listeners. this isn't quite like I'm sort of feel like I'm just making connections in my brain that don't exist in reality. So this doesn't quite feel right until I know more. I feel like I need to just read all of this and understand each one of these before I can data URLs. See, only supported with the window data URL feature flag. That could be what the heck does that mean? Five of them enabled by default. Enabled? How do you know which ones are enabled by default? Because default only has 3. I don't know what that means. Okay. How's everyone doing? How's everyone getting on? Do we have anybody here still? Oh, there's only a couple of you. Who's still here? Put your hands up. I've just seen this message tone. Sorry, that is old. Apologies. What are some interesting use cases people have been using PHP for so far? Yes, that's a good question. I think that well, I've seen quite a few of the same kind of app. Honestly, a lot when it was sort of first announced and people were playing around with it, building taskbar apps, and the one that seemed to pop up most often was some sort of kind of time tracking thing, which is fine, like it makes sense. I think it's been done a lot, but it's an easy starting point and it seems practical. Yeah, I would like to see more complex apps, honestly. I think the potential is there for anyone to build something really, really good. You know, like if you look at the productivity apps that you use day to day, so, I mean, Notion's maybe a crazy example, but it's a good one. Even something like Telegram, Screen Studio is classic because that actually uses Electron. That's a screen recording software, which is incredible. I mean, like, it's a bit slow at times, but to say that that's basically JavaScript is pretty good. Warp is a Rust app. That's a terminal. Like, you could build literally all of those kinds of apps, any of those, using native PHP. I'm not saying you should build all of them. There are some things there that PHP is not best suited for at all. But like, there's stuff that you could build with Laravel just very easily, and put it in a desktop context, and it would work really well. Like even with very minimal JavaScript, like a Livewire app is a really good way of creating some of that responsive UI. You could do all sorts of things with it, and not responsive, you know what I mean, reactive UI. This one, Spark Desktop. I don't know if you've ever used Spark email, like a decent email app. Somebody wants to build a decent email app. You actually can now, because the PHP binary I don't think the version that we've got in native PHP yet does, but it can include the IMAP extension for PHP. So you can legitimately create an email client. That could be quite cool. Complicated, but cool. You could create a calendar app. Like there's literally no limits on what you could do. It's just whether you should do it with PHP in the background. Like if it's some super intensive processing and something, like probably don't. But yeah, I haven't actually seen too many of the kind of apps. We started where is it? Maybe it's in here. Can't remember. Let's see. Yeah, Awesome-NativePHP. Where we were we are allowing people to list the stuff that they're building. There's not a lot on there, and there's not any pull requests waiting. So I think it would be good to see more come through here. Honestly, this would be the ideal place to spot those kinds of things. There's some interesting ones already though. Tool displays, logs, sketching app. Somebody built Doom into it, which I haven't looked at this actually. I was going to. That's nice. My guess is this is a JavaScript port of Doom, and where would that be? It's just sat on top of a Laravel application. It's not jumping out at me, so I don't know. Maybe I'm completely wrong. Where would it be? Game controller, inertia, render game. So where's that? It's going to be in resources, views, no, TypeScript, yes, game, and yeah, so it wasn't a package. It's just I didn't even know that they'd got this CDN JavaScript Doom. I don't know what DOS is and stuff. I haven't messed around with that. So it's literally just a wrapper for a JavaScript port of Doom. But it's Doom in native PHP. Like there's actually cool things that you could do with that, right? You could actually potentially extend the game a little bit more with some extra things. Although you can't modify the JavaScript run, but you could do things external to the game, whatever. You could enable controller to be passed through somehow via Bluetooth, whatever. There's all these things that could happen. Again, whether you should or not. That was quite an interesting one. I have seen, I can't remember it now, but there's a bunch of folks working on actually doing 3D rendering in PHP, which I'm also like, I don't know whether you should do that, but that would actually be Doom in PHP rather than just a wrapper with a JS port. That could be quite cool. Air quality index. Like menu bar time tracking, an IP tracker. Christoph Rumpel did a Friends one. social network kind of thing in the taskbar. That looked quite cool, but I think he's not releasing it because he wants it to be secure. Adrian, can you explain why a web server is bad? Yes, I can. Web server isn't bad. Let's just get that out there first. Web servers aren't bad, but there are a number of factors to think about when you're building applications like this. We probably don't really want like somebody installing 10 of these applications and have 10 web servers on. Well, it's actually more, right? Because if you're installing an Electron app right now, you're going to install potentially the web server. Like if you're not using static files for the app, then you're probably going to have a web server, and that might be running Node or it might be running PHP or whatever. So you've got the kind of Electron side server that allows you to communicate via HTTP with Electron. And then you've got your application side server, which in our case is the PHP web server, which is somewhat unusual because you've got two, but then you've got two. So if you had 10 native PHP applications from different vendors installed on your machine, you've now got 20 web servers running if you had them all open at the same time. That is not great. Like there's an unnecessary amount of resource usage there going on. So just from a purely performance perspective, that's not particularly fun. But I think it's more serious than that. I think there are risks involved in having web servers running on, let's say consumers' machines. So let's say you built a native PHP app and you distribute it to consumers, which obviously you distribute everything to consumers. But I mean, like people who are less familiar with the risk profile of installing a bundled PHP application onto their device. So they're not necessarily going to be completely aware of what's going on behind the scenes. And because of that lack of awareness that they have, that can lead the developer, you, me, to be naive, lazy, and just think, we don't need to deal with this because people who use this are never going to worry about it. And I think history has proven that's just not the case. Like, far from them not worrying about it, people who know how to abuse that stuff will, and then they'll worry about it even more. Like eventually people who have installed your software will be like, why did you do this? And it will potentially become very bad. And a web server in this context, it could potentially open itself up to all sorts of problems. Like there's nothing to stop, if you find the port that the server is operating on, sending it requests, right? We have to do a little bit of work in native PHP to make sure that it's only the native PHP application that's sending the request to that web server instance. And even that, that can be circumvented if you know where to dig and can find out that, whatever the key is that's being used and whatever the port is that the server's running on. So with a little bit of work, people would be able to get around that. And then suddenly you've got, two sides of your application that should only be communicating with each other now being communicated from the outside, and that might be another application, like somebody installs a nefarious crafts and installs a nefarious application that is there to mess with a competitor's application, and they go on the hunt for the keys and the ports, and they keep finding it and they keep attacking it, and that could lead to unusual behavior of the application on the user's device, like let's say windows opening and closing, moving around the screen, that kind of thing, whatever the the web server API allows your application to do, which with native PHP is going to be trying to expose pretty much everything that Electron and Tauri allows you to do, so that your Laravel application can tell it to do that kind of stuff. You just don't really want that level of risk knocking around. I would say there are going to be a handful of circumstances where that would be acceptable, but generally you just don't want that. And I think that's why I want to embark on this challenge, really. But the question is going to be whether it's even doable. I think we'll be close with what we're doing, but it's going to be tough. What I still need to figure out is, how do I tell the web view to load this thing? I don't want to do this eval nonsense that I'm doing, because that just feels really wrong. Web view, Tauri web view hooks. So on web resource request, clients closely execute when the web view makes an HTTP request for a web resource, allowing you to modify the response. This is the one. I think this is the one. Thanks for your explanation. You're welcome. Thank you for your polite response. I think this is it. So where does this happen? Window builder. I don't know if I have access to this. Window builder. Yeah. New app. So this is like I get the request, so I can tell it what the request is here, and then when it's built the window to that URL, it calls this on web resource request hook. I'm calling it that, and I haven't seen that anywhere, but with the request, and then this is a callback. This is a Lambda function because of the two pipes. So I'm passing a Lambda into on web resource request, and it's receiving the request and the response. Which is then allowing, I don't know what this response type actually is. A HTTP response. Which means then that I can modify it. So it depends where that response comes from, because if there's no file for it to load, if there's nothing that it's actually that's responding, I don't know what that's going to look like. Well, let's see if we can actually make this work, right? So the other problem here is the docs are catered for I'm building my app directly in Tauri, not what I'm doing, which is I'm building a plugin. Do you know what, does that make sense? Like when I'm writing Rust code, I'm writing a plugin for Tauri, but the docs are geared towards people writing Rust code as part of their main application. So there's a lot of this stuff, which is usually contextual to like my main function of my app, which is this one, because it's Tauri Builder default setup. We don't run setup here because we do it through the plugin. So there's a lot of assumptions that have to be made. Yeah. The other thing is, like, well, yeah, the timing of this is the tricky one. So setup, I think, is implied by run. I can't remember which way around it is. Run. Build up run. Where's runs the configured app setup, defines the setup hook, and that. Oh, look, there's another one on page load. I don't know if you get access to these hooks in plugins. I don't. Tauri setup hook in plugin. Oh. Yeah, that's not what I wanted. Let's see what the beta docs say about plugin development. Ah, look, it's got some stuff about lifecycle events which weren't in the old docs. Excellent. But then these are going to be like V2 events, potentially. Don't know, because there's no reference to what version this is. Oh. Okay, I don't know. Plugins can hook into several lifecycle events. Setup, when plugin is being initialized. Yeah, okay. On navigation, web view is attempting to perform navigation. This is really good. Why? Why would you need this? Exactly. This is what should be in documentation. When would I use this? Validate the navigation or track URL changes. Right. What are those events? On event, handle core events, menu events, application exit requested. Yeah. Fine. Those are quite basic. I think potentially it's on navigation, but that only gives us access to the window and the URL. The window being I don't know what. Something. And like, I don't even know if those docs are for V1 or V2. I mean, they do look better. It looks like they've put more thought into the docs, but just can't tell if this is version it's for. That's really frustrating. HTTP client. No, it's not, I don't want the HTTP client. I'm not making HTTP requests from Rust. Interesting. There's some interesting plugins here. Yeah. No. Still working on the docs, obviously. Window customization. Damn it. That's V1. Okay, well, I've gone down a little bit of a side path to see if there's a way to do this with a plugin, but I feel like here, where when we do the setup of the app, it's kind of similar to when we do the setup of a plugin. It just happens a little bit later. And what does this have access to? It does have access to the app. What's API in that context? I don't know. That's not clear. But presumably, I'm already doing that, right? There's a setup somewhere. Oh, it's initialize. This is different. I think this is different in the time when plugin name. What's the name of the plugin? Plugin's configuration is set on the builder and parsed at runtime. Define the plugin config. So we've got this init function. No, this is all different, isn't it? That would suggest that those docs are all talking about all V2 stuff, which worries me because I don't think we're going to be able to achieve some of this without it. So yeah, I don't know. I like the look of these docs, but I'm not going to be swayed by what they say because it looks quite different to what I'm building at the moment. And there's not enough really in these docs to give me a good clue. But so this is the V1 thing that we're doing, where we have, that's still public function init. Why? Where is that? Why have I got that set up like this? I don't know. quite understand why it's so different to this. Definitely got I think it's because I've tried to set stuff. I don't even know. I don't know. I've got pub struct. Why am I setting it as pub? I'm explicitly making the native PHP struct accessible outside of this file. And I don't know why. That doesn't feel necessary. And then this just has an init function. I think they must have come from somewhere else. Yeah, okay. So it's because it's using the Tauri plugin struct. Yeah. This is like a simplified version. And then this one is the advanced one. So instead of relying on the Tauri plugin struct returned by build, you can implement the plugin yourself. And it's not super clear as to why this is that good. This allows you to have full control over the associated data. Great, but why would I do that? I don't know. This is what happens with me and Rust at the moment, and Tauri. So I'm like learning both of these things, trying to make sense of it all. Anyway, this okay, fine. So we've got ooh la la. My plugin. Import runtime native PHP. This is my new this is where I basically set up my struct of data that my plugin needs to keep, which I don't need those now. Get rid of those. I probably it's gonna complain. Yeah. Where take me to your leader. Where's the no? That's the wrong thing. I'm going to leave those because I need to clean them up from somewhere else first. Okay, and then fine. This go away. Don't want you. This seems to suggest that there are things that I can do. Maybe I can do this one. So name initialization. Initialize plugin with config provided in the that's if I want to access config. That seems highly specific. Callback invoked when the window is created. I think that's what I'm doing at the moment, isn't it? Why? Ah, yeah. So my impl for my plugin and then the applying the Tauri plugin implementation for the native PHP plugin, and this is where I set up my hooks, right? And window created, I do that, and I'm doing initialize is where I'm doing my request, but maybe it's on page load payload. Callback invoked when the web view performs navigation. I've already got it set up, but I'm not doing anything with it. Okay. What does this expect? Who knows? Tauri plugin on page load. Creation will be triggered after window to control window properties. Plugin uses created lifecycle hooks. Oh, that's it. On page load and created lifecycle hooks. Great. And no examples of how that's used. Screenshots of code. Was there one there at the end? A window. See, I can't do stuff with the window. I need it. Basically, I need to set this on web resource request when the window's being built, not after the fact. And there's nothing that lets me do that unless it happens in initialize. Window builder builds windows, like it's gonna create another window. I don't. Do I want another window? I don't know if I do. Where do I even? I mean, I have got a window builder. That's what I'm doing. I'm creating that window, but then I'm loading it up this way. Okay. Yeah, that's the same. So, wait, let's think. If I'm doing that here and then I'm calling build, that's the thing that's spawning the window. I just need to add this label. I'm going to call it main. And then kind of, what's that invoke handler? Where's that come from? I didn't do that. Yeah. No, stop doing that. Crazy. Right. Then okay. This I'm going to comment all of this stuff out because this isn't. I don't need that, but what I do. That's when Copilot actually makes sense. Try and give me a clue as to what you're going to do. What I want to do is see if the request matches the one that I'm passing in there at the beginning, which I guess it should. Because it didn't output anything. Where's my little bit of debug? Has it come out before? It can't have come out before. Blah, blah, blah. No. That means I don't know what that means. I'm doing this in a separate thread. This is like messing with my head. That still should have come out in the terminal. It's a lot of huffing, isn't it? It's very frustrating. I don't know. Why did that not do anything? It's the right one. I can make this change and it's not going to show me the output in the web view. It's going to take forever. Still no output. Am I just being really dumb? Am I missing it? Somewhere here. No. It's definitely not outputting. So, debug. It's not working. Let's just do. I don't think it's the on web resource request basically is running until like the next request potentially. On web resource request. So then I basically need to tell it to go somewhere else or like refresh. Window dot location equals format. Do I need to format? No. Let's see. Even that hasn't triggered it. Maybe because it's the same. This gets slow really fast. Stopping, recompiling. I think this is why I actually enjoy PHP, because I don't have to do this. That's interesting. So it's changed the URL, so the eval worked to adjust the location, but that hasn't triggered the web resource request function, because I still haven't got the output from that. What? Some output. Let's just. Just being really silly. No, definitely not outputting from within this closure. Which suggests that it's not running it. Which means it's not, this isn't triggering a resource request. Which, I don't know if that's going to work then for us at all. Let's try the other way, which is, well, what's on page load? That is on the plugins. But I don't know if we get access to, I don't know what that looks like. What is a page payload? Oh, that was very good. How did it know how to do that? Yeah, we don't have that. See, I don't think we can do anything with the on-page load hook. Oh, everybody's gone. Well, yeah, this is a tricky one. This is very tricky because I don't know enough about what's going on in Tauri world, and it's a little bit intractable because the docs are not great. Maybe I need to ask. I dislike Discord. Save it. That's still going to open on the wrong screen. I just know it. There we go. So, where? How then do I do? How do I search? Oh man, this is. Why would you use Discord as a forum? Honestly, I don't know. What am I trying to search for? Plugin, and I want it to on. Oh, maybe it's not plugin. Maybe it's just on web resource request. How do I search in support? V2. You can't use V2 already. Stop it. Header part. Please provide. What is it? But throws various errors. Yeah. The on web resource request only works on the default URL. I don't know what that means. remote one. Okay. Where's that in the docs? Currently only implemented for the Tauri URI protocol. Oh, there. So it's got to be the location has got to be Tauri something. Tauri that's why they say always check the URL. Read the docs. Read them properly. That's what it should be. So if the location is set to Tauri, we're going to say Tauri Laravel. I don't know. If this works, I will eat my hat. Actually, if this works, I'm going to stop. Because even though as much as I want to carry on, if it does work, I think we've had enough. It's the end of the day for me and I need a break. And something worked. It didn't really. It said index. It's tried a bunch of things. But it still didn't really do it. Like, I don't even know what that's supposed to do. Asset not found, index HTML. Where's that? What is the Tauri? It's going to go to source, maybe? Where? Source. No. Dist. There's no dist. I think it bails because it couldn't find a file. Let's just make it go to the default one and see what happens. Still nothing. No, it doesn't run. Yeah. I mean, I just don't know if I'm even interpreting this correctly, to be honest. Defines a close to be executed when the web view makes an HTTP request for a web resource, allowing you to modify the response for a web resource. But then only if it's a Tauri URL. So it's not a navigation. It's not allowing us to mess with the navigation. So that's actually not the right function at all. It's not letting me fetch a resource. It's not letting me handle page requests. It's just on resource. Page requests, that might be navigation. So I could still use this one for maybe an Ajax call. Don't know. What have we got? Let's do a fetch. Let's fetch. What's fetch? JavaScript. Fetch. Fetch. Let's just do that. Just want it to give me some output. I want to know that that function can be called and in what context. Is it only going to be for like images or JavaScript or whatever? Like understanding when it runs is like half the, like why is that not in the documentation? Who knows? No, still nothing. So but then the fetch, I bet the fetch hasn't even run. Unexpected identifier fetch after variable. Maybe fetch is broken. Tauri fetch. Wait. I must have that enabled. This will be interesting. Will it allow this to import at runtime? It's a good thing about Tauri. It's like really secure. No. Unexpected token. So I think that's probably because that it would be expecting npm to do this stuff. No, I can't do that in the browser. The browser doesn't know. But they've removed fetch, or they've disabled fetch, whatever it is that they're doing. So I can't use fetch. But that feels weird because, I don't know. How did it work before with the other apps? It doesn't feel right somehow. Like, something about eval. I'm at giving up point already, I think. If I do, what was this before? It's window location, it was that. Let's go all the way forward again. Document element in a HTML. Body in a HTML equals Tauri. So, yeah, whatever. So on web resources, on navigation is probably the one that I want. But what does that even let me do? Still nothing. Still no output from that function. Is that because it's an unfound request asset? Accept. So if it's 404, maybe it doesn't run that callback. But that would be weird, because then why let you rewrite the, or maybe it doesn't let you rewrite, maybe it just lets you fiddle with the response. Because then you can fiddle with just the headers. It feels really limited. Like, I don't understand why that function exists if you can only do very minimal things with it. Like, surely one of the great purposes of this is to get in on the process of the data flowing through the web view and do cool stuff with it. But they've locked it down, like you can't, which is really annoying. So anyway, what is, excuse me, on navigation, Returning false cancels, but returning something else? Is that possible? That's just to pause navigation. It's not to do anything with the request or the response. Ugh. But I want like a programmable response where I can say, I'm receiving this request, and here's the response that I want you to have. Some additional browser args. Oh, that's only for Windows, really. How can I say I just want this HTML in the web view, not location? Or that the location is a proxy. Location's a proxy to something else. Tauri web view location response from Rust. No, I don't want to call Rust from the front end. this is kind of the wrong way around. That sounds exciting, but it's not right. I don't know what this is. I don't know. I think I'm going to have to wrap it up, and we just have to pause for a bit on this again, unfortunately. I feel like I've just been silently trawling through documentation for ages, and that's not very fun for anybody. If you're watching this, and everybody's gone, which is understandable, but if you're watching this later, I'm sorry. But thanks for sticking with it. If you do come up with any ideas, leave them in the comments. And yeah, this challenge of trying to do a serverless version of this is a big one. I think it's going to be doable. Just need to find the right path, and that's going to take me some time. Anyway, right, I'm gonna call it quits. I'm gonna call it a day. I'm gonna have a good weekend, and we'll maybe come back to this next week. Maybe I've made some progress on it by then. Anyway, thanks for watching.